Hey, everybody listening out there. Welcome to the very first episode of Rowan and the Wasteland. I am the titular Rowan, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Shane Conto, the Wasteland reviewer himself.
Yes, how's it going, everyone? Obviously, my name is not the Wasteland, but you get it.
Close enough, honestly. I mean, they sound similar, right?
It's all about branding. Always be branding.
Of course, whenever I think of, whenever the word Wasteland comes into my head, it automatically goes to you, so you have done your job well, sir.
There you
Um,
go.
But anyway, yeah, this is the very first episode of our fledgling podcast. Still not entirely sure how we're going to start this thing, so this is us winging it. If you if you couldn't notice, yeah, so basically, the premise of this podcast, I guess we should sort of start off with that before jumping into our first film.
Mhm.
Is we are going to every week we are going to discuss a movie of one of our choices, and then after our discussion of the film, we are going to talk about three categories. And within those categories, we are going to list our top five. For example, today we are talking about. Before I even say the name of the movie, I'm going to say we are talking about dinosaur movies, low budget horror, and movies released in 2018. So we will be counting down our top five from in those categories, and and we're gonna see where the movie of the week ranks within our lists, if it ranks at all. And then I don't know if Shane plans to do this as well, but I will be starting a master list of the movies that we watch, and as the podcast goes on, we'll see where each film ranks within the larger filmography that we've discussed so far.
Absolutely. I think it's going to be fun, and we're going to see where this first one's going to lie. Well, at least now, gets to be number one.
And who knows? I think I have a feeling, depending on what we discuss in the next few weeks, I think this is going to stay number one for me for quite a while. Yeah, so the movie we are going to discuss today that was my choice, as you might learn, is the 2018 film that somehow exists called The VelociPastor. Shane, what was your reaction when I first pitched this movie?
So I'm going to give a little context here. So I work very closely with October Coast, which is a PR firm that gives me a lot of screeners, which is absolutely amazing. They're wonderful people. Uh, Alicia is the one that I met on Twitter who actually got me connected with them. She's one of their reps. And I recall one of my first ones was like Hatched. And it's like this really, really low budget dinosaur horror movie. And I was looking at their website and I see the VelociPastor. I'm like, what the hell is this? And then I'm like, I would probably never actually watch that on my own. And then the fateful day when Rowan asked if I wanted to do a podcast, and when Rowan told me what his first pick was, I'm like, fate has brought me here today to watch the VelociPastor. And that was probably my reaction, except within like 5 seconds.
Yeah, yeah. It all rushed in your head. You had the flashback. You saw your whole history with the VelociPastor flash before your eyes, which probably took like a millisecond because it was very brief on its own.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So this movie, as I mentioned, released in 2018. Very very low budget. I haven't been able to find a specific number on the internet, but I think the general consensus is around $35,000, which isn't terrible, but it's nowhere near what you would need to produce like a high grade feature with some really solid production design. However, this movie, the viewing that I did for this podcast was probably my fourth time watching, maybe even fifth. My father attends an annual film fest with his friends. They've been doing it for years and years, since long before I was born, and they basically the whole vibe of the fest is that they watch a bunch of movies that are either bad or low budget that they can have fun with, not necessarily laugh at, just have fun with. And one
Mhm.
year, my dad comes home and he says to my mom and me, "I just watched the craziest movie." and I want to watch it with you guys. So we sat us down, pulled up Amazon Prime, and we watched the VelociPastor in glorious HD. And from then on, I introduced it to some of my friends. We all watched it together. It became a meme among our group. And then senior year of high school rolled around, and we were still very, very much in the depths of COVID, still are, as we're recording this in mid-April. And just in case you're listening in the future and the pandemic is a thing of the past, fingers crossed.
And you're just like, what's a pandemic?
And we found out that we didn't have exams, that we would not be having exams at the end of the year in the middle of March. Now after that, my teachers, just most of them just dropped the curriculum altogether. Like, no more schoolwork. We're just going to have fun for the last 2 months, which we were totally on board with. My Latin teacher, I just want to shout him out, Dr. Wright, legend. He decided to show us movies for the rest of the year. Now, of course, it took a few classes. The classes were about 50 minutes long, so it took us a few classes to actually watch a full movie. He was planning on showing us the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then one of the history teachers stole his thunder by showing his students that. And there was some crossover, so Dr. Wright decided not to do it. Now, my friends Aaron, Xander, Hunter, and I, big VelociPastor fans, pitched this to Dr. Wright and said, well, it's action, it's horror, and it's funny. And Dr. Wright, I asked him about it today, actually, over Twitter, and he said we were in fourth quarter brain, and Mr. Fetzer stole my Lord of the Ring thunder, so I just thought, why not? And he put it on. And let me just say, that is one of the best classes that I've ever had, ever. Watching the VelociPastor in a Latin class, it sounds like the punchline to a joke. And wow, that was quite an experience. I'll sprinkle in some anecdotes as we discuss the film of the class's reaction to certain things. And to after this, actually, in English class, we had an assignment where we were just going to do a presentation on anything. We could talk about anything we wanted. Naturally, Xander and I chose to do a presentation on why the VelociPastor is an underrated gem of filmmaking. I don't think we convinced anyone, but hey, at least we tried.
I remember when I took Latin. I took Latin from 8th grade to 12th grade. And my senior year, my one classmate, John, brought Fantastic Mr. Fox with him to school every day. And we wound up watching that in Latin class because that makes a whole lot of sense.
Right. I mean, one of the movies we watched was Gladiator, which was at least tangentially related. But
Yeah.
like, we also watched Star Wars: The Last Jedi. We watched The Royal Tenenbaums. It was all over the place.
We watched I, Claudius, the BBC miniseries, which actually was relevant to
Right.
what we're learning in
Another
ancient
very
Rome.
relevant thing. Yeah.
But yes, I wonder what Mrs. Poyet would say if we tried to watch the VelociPastor in her class. Probably be like, what the hell did you put on? But
Yeah.
I guess at this point, maybe it's time to start talking about what this movie's all about.
I am extremely curious as to your thoughts, Shane, because I have seen this many times before. I can quote half of this film, but Shane, this was your first time.
Yes.
What was your initial reaction? I know I was I was messaging you. I had to know, but I was really hoping you were gonna like it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to rate this in two different ways. Because if you actually rate this as like a film, I'm just like, besides, like, there are some legitimate, really funny things in it that are done on purpose to be funny and are legitimately funny. But in general, this is from like a story perspective of like, I don't care about this romance, what is going on here. But from like a pure fun standpoint, this was some of the most fun I've had for an hour and 15 minutes in a long time. So
I'm so
like
glad to hear.
like sometimes like I'm watching some of these screeners, I'm just like, this is even fun. But like that's not the case with this. This is like they know exactly what kind of movie they're making.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the choices in this movie, oh my god. Because like you see the poster and you see this big CGI looking velociraptor and like a zombie looking pastor.
When
But
I
then
edit
you,
together the when I edit the video, I'll put the poster right in between us, so the audience can see it.
yes, and then you watch the movie, and no, this is not a large CGI velociraptor. It's
the
a guy in a
poster
suit.
the poster looks better than the movie could possibly hope to be, which is hilarious because they know how to draw you in. Because the poster looks awesome, it looks so cool, and the
Like,
movie is
that
not
looks
that.
like if they found, like, because, like, let's be real here, this movie was made for like $5. Like, Patrick, it's like, I have $2. Like, that's basically what this movie looks like when you
Right?
watch it. But like, the poster makes it look like this was probably like a couple $100,000.
Yeah,
And it was not. And you can tell.
yeah.
And the velociraptor in this is absolutely hilarious.
Especially when you see it in the light at the very end, because earlier in the movie you just see it in the dark and it's like, okay, there's some promise here, and then at the very end they just go screw it, and they you can see the man's head in the dinosaur's spine. When I first saw that with my parents, I mean, every time I watch this, I die at multiple points during this movie, just on the floor laughing. It is just unbearably like hysterical. They absolutely knew what they were doing, which I think is definitely part of the charm. I don't think it would work if it was not as self aware.
No, and you know, you watch some movies that are just like, how's this so serious?
Yeah.
How's this movie taking itself so seriously? Why is Vin Diesel taking himself so seriously in this ridiculous movie? That's all your Fast and Furious fans out there. Those movies would be so much more fun if Vin Diesel didn't take himself so seriously. They literally went into space. But like, this movie knows exactly, like, there is one particular shot at the beginning of the movie that you know this movie is not taking itself seriously, nor should you. And
By the way, I would recommend all of you listeners or viewers watch this movie before
yeah,
listening to this podcast. You do not want a lot of these jokes spoiled for you, because like however we present it, it is not going to be as funny as it is in the movie.
no, no, there's something very special with how that all plays out at the beginning of the movie. I'm just like, because even leading up to that moment, it
Mhm.
felt so cheesy,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, hey, and just like obnoxious waving and big smiles,
Mom and
and then
Dad.
mom and dad, and then cut, and you're just like, are you kidding me? And you're just like, I can't with this movie.
Hey, at least they start off strong.
Yes,
They know how to draw you in.
that, like, this side of Edgar Wright, I don't know if I laughed at a edit gag so hard in a long time. That and pinatas, everything everywhere,
Yeah.
everything everywhere all at once. Like, I legitimately laughed so hard at that
Mhm.
watching that movie. Just pinatas.
Yeah.
Uh, but
I'm
like
seeing it again
this,
tomorrow for the third time. I'm so excited.
there you go. Um, I'm gonna be watching Mark Wahlberg turn into a priest on Saturday.
Have fun. At least I have a feeling that this priest movie is going to be a lot more exciting than that one. That's just an instinct I have.
Unless Mark Wahlberg turns into a velociraptor.
Oh, if that happens, you have to tell me. I don't even care if you're spoiling it. I will head to the theater. I will skip class and go to the theater to watch that immediately.
Oh my god. If Father Stu turns into a velociraptor and then his dad, played by Mel Gibson's like, stop being a dinosaur and get a real job, I'm gonna laugh so hard and walk out of the theater, message Rowan, just be like, it happened. It happened.
You know what's hilarious is that we have no idea when this podcast episode is going to come out. It could come out like in the summer or the fall for all we know. So, and honestly, I have a feeling that not too many people are going to go see Father Stew. So, for all we know, it could happen that way.
We could just tell people that's what the actual movie was. You didn't
Yeah,
see it, you don't know.
exactly.
But this movie, The VelociPastor, obviously it has a following already.
Mhm.
But this movie's definitely going to be one of those things that people are going to watch drunk or tipsy with a whole group of friends at a party. Or like this is going to get some kind of running watch at like a midnight theater.
I would prefer a Criterion release, but that works too.
So, Rowan, if this gets a Criterion release, I will literally Venmo you $50.
$50? Oh, that's so lame. You should offer to pay off my student debt. That would be that
You
would
want
be
to pay
what
off
would
my
bring.
student debt?
Ah, interesting. We could pay off each other's student debt.
Student.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might be 30, still paying for it. So,
Not looking forward to that.
and
Anyway.
I'm lucky. I only have
Right.
I'm like 7,000 less.
Yeah.
I'm just like a lot of other people I know are just like you're gonna be paying for it forever.
But that
Uh,
is really what our listeners came to hear about. Us discussing the student debt that has been affecting our lives for years and years. Well, I'm only a freshman in college, but
if
you get the
I
idea.
could, the amount of student debt that I came out of college with was probably equal to the budget that this movie had,
Totally fair.
according
Yeah.
to your numbers. So, but like I have to say, like, obviously, I mentioned earlier, on some level, this is just not a great film.
Mhm.
And I just sat there, I'm just like, why do I care about this relationship in this movie? I don't care about this relationship in this movie. The acting is really stiff and awkward. But, like, sometimes you just watch a movie and you're just like, yeah, I just had fun with this. And that's good enough for me, I guess.
Yeah. I think everyone is giving not necessarily 100%, but they're not giving below 50. And like within that range, there are varying levels of commitment. There's a scene midway through when the Chinese drug lord, I guess, is talking to his subordinate, and they're planning, and then the drug lord just starts laughing. And then his right hand man just starts awkwardly laughing too, and then the man stops, subordinate stops, man starts laughing again, and we get all sorts of weird zoom ins. And like it is, there is no possible way this movie could have been made if they didn't know exactly what they were getting into. And just the fact that they were able to get everyone on board who completely understand, like who completely knows what this movie's going for. They all understand the assignment, and that's why this movie works. It would not work if anyone was just phoning it in. If they thought it
No.
was if they thought it was a serious movie, everyone knows the vibe.
Well, and so I'm going to compare this to another cult classic that I'm going to say I absolutely despise, which is The Room. I am not the kind of person that will sit and watch The Room. That is 2 hours that I will never get back in my life. I will watch clips on the internet of it, but here's the difference. Tommy Wiseau was legitimately making a movie, and it turned out that bad. This, you can tell that they're like, we're leaning into this and having some fun with it, which is why I feel like I could watch this movie. Like, I'll watch this again. I will
Mhm.
definitely watch this again at some point in my life. I will watch the VelociPastor again. But, like, I can never see myself watching The Room again. I can't sit for 2 hours watching that movie again.
Yeah. This is one that you can definitely have fun with. It's not one. So The Room, I have a complicated history with The Room. When I watch The Room, I skip through the 20 minutes of sex scenes. And I say when I watch The Room, I've seen it maybe twice already. But you're right. Tommy Wiseau genuinely thought he was going to like sweep the Oscars with that movie. VelociPastor is not trying for that, but it knows exactly what it is. It knows it's not trying for that. And again, like everyone involved knows it. And I like that's where the enjoyment comes from, I think.
Yeah. And you're never, ever, ever gonna find another movie where you can watch a whole like gang of ninjas fighting a dude in a velociraptor suit as the climax to your movie, and you're just like, oh. I didn't realize I needed something like this in my life, but this legitimately is happening right now, and I'm enjoying this. I'm having fun with it.
Yeah. The director said, "This movie is made to be fun, and anyone looking deep for deeper meaning in the man turns into a dinosaur genre is probably on a fool's errand." Which sums up exactly, what the message of this movie is. It's not meant to have any it's not really meant to have a moral. Sure, it plays around with, family, with culture, but not really. If you really think about that, it gets decently offensive. So don't think about it at all. But
That
yeah.
that's the thing, is like if you get caught up thinking about like do these two even have any chemistry together or
No.
anything like that, and it's just like if you get bogged down in that, you're not paying attention to the right parts of this movie. Because like what you should be paying attention to is the fact that this movie has ninjas and priests turning into velociraptors.
As any good movie should.
Yep. Like this reminded me of like on the same level of absolute absurdity of like Kung Fury. Have you ever watched that?
That's a half hour short, right? Am I
Yeah.
thinking of the right one? Yeah.
It's just like I remember some of my friends showed me that in like grad school. I'm just like,
Mhm.
what did I just watch? And this feels like it's on the same level of like, we're gonna make the most absurd movie possible. And they succeeded. And it's all for the better for it.
Mhm. Yeah. So before we dive a little deeper into the film, I have some behind the scenes info that I think might be interesting.
Okay.
So the writer director Brendan Steer thought of the idea in 2010 when attending the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan, and his phone autocorrected Velociraptor to VelociPastor. So a very very simple little mistake turned into one of the greatest, what I hope will become one of the greatest cult classics of all time. And then, as a class project, he made a series of short little grindhouse trailers, one of which included the VelociPastor. And that one absolutely blew up on YouTube. So we thought perhaps it could work as a film. Um, and he tried to crowdfund it multiple times, didn't succeed, and he found a private investor that eventually got the movie made. And Wikipedia says that Steer was influenced by director Guillermo del Toro, which honestly you can't see it in the movie, but it does make a lot of sense if you really think about it.
It's all about the monster.
Exactly.
Guillermo loves his monsters.
He does. And yeah, so Shane, we've sort of been dancing around it for a solid 20 minutes. What do you like? What do you think of the VelociPastor? Do you think that, like, if people for some reason haven't watched it already, should they watch it?
I think it depends on what you're looking for. Because like if you're legitimately looking for like a good film and want to sit down and like see some impressive cinema, or if you're sitting there and you're just like, I want to laugh, I want to have a good time, I have some friends over. Those are the kind of people that I think are going to get more out of the VelociPastor. Because like this is that kind of film where it's just like if somebody was like, "What's a movie?" I'm having a bunch of people over and we just want to have some fun together. It's just like you have an hour and 15 minutes. Watch the VelociPastor,
It's really
because I feel
short.
like that's a thing. Like it's a short movie,
Yeah.
and I feel like this is the kind of thing where it's just like I would recommend this for a very specific situation. I would not recommend this to everybody because I know people who'd be like, "What the hell was this?" and not appreciate how silly and goofy it is.
Yeah. Yeah. This is an absolutely insane movie that should be enjoyed by absolutely insane people. I could quote this movie not backwards and forwards. I haven't seen it enough times for that, but I could quote it forwards. I think I could probably do half of this movie verbatim. We're not gonna go through and do a quote off like we did for the Nice Guys on one of Shane's YouTube shows, but I wrote down a crap ton of ideas, not ideas of quotes, of lines that are just, maybe they're not as funny out of context, but some of them are funny out of context. Some of them are just funny in general.
Yeah, I'm pulling up like the quotes on IMDb because I
Yeah.
want to see what they have on here.
One thing that I, yeah, well, so this movie is just like, in my opinion, endlessly quotable. Half of my notes are quotes. But one, like, this movie even starts off hysterical. Right, like, the even before we see any characters, anything, the words rated X come on screen. Now, when we were watching this in Latin class, my teacher almost jumped out of his seat and said, "Oh my God, what am I showing you guys?" And then the words fade below it, "by an all Christian jury." And so automatically they are telling you exactly what you're in for and exactly what kind of mood you should be in while watching it. Because if you're gonna take the first line too seriously, you will not, like you are not in the right headspace for this movie.
You know, you're getting into a movie with one of your biggest one character named Frankie Mermaid.
Why do they call him Frankie Mermaid, Shane?
I don't know, Rowan. Why do they call him Frankie Mermaid?
Because he's swimming in bitches.
Swimming in bitches. I'm just like, oh my god, this movie. Like, somebody somebody with an amazing sense of humor had to have written that. And
Yeah.
just like, you know what? We're going all out. We're gonna have a pimp named Frankie Mermaid, and he's swimming in bitches.
With a massive comb over and a great
Massive.
hat.
Oh, like I'm just looking at some of these quotes. I don't believe you. Dinosaurs never existed, and even if they did, I don't transform into one.
I couldn't write a script like this. This is genuinely funny. It's like, I feel like, and also, I feel like if they wanted to make like a quote unquote serious comedy film, like a legit comedy film with this premise, it could work, but it works so much better when presented like this. Low budget, with actors who are hamming it up the entire time, and with a shoestring budget. Because I genuinely think that it lends itself the best to the premise, because the premise is super ridiculous. And granted, we have seen a lot of movies with ridiculous premises, but this is one that definitely works best made exactly the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Like we said, there's pastors, there's velociraptors, there's ninjas, there's pimps, there's drug dealers, all kinds of
Oh my
stuff.
god! My friend Aaron went as Frankie Mermaid for Character Day during Spirit Week in senior year, and I went as the VelociPastor. I can when I'm editing, if I care enough, I'll throw up a photo of me with my dinosaur hand. I actually went as the VelociPastor again for Halloween this year. I took a work glove from my shed back home, and I taped two sets of the fingers together so it looked like a dinosaur claw. And yeah, just easy costume. Get a formal, a black button up and a little like white paper thing to slide in. Like, easy A plus, low effort costume, works perfectly. Would recommend.
There you go, Rowan. I I would love to see those pictures at some point, even if we
I
don't
will
put
send
them
them
into
to
the
you for
podcast.
sure.
Oh my god, that's so
um,
great.
I also want to mention the main character's name is Doug Jones. I'm not sure if that was an intentional link to creature character actor Doug Jones, who acts in a lot of Del Toro's films. Actually, no. Actually, that makes perfect sense. If he was influenced by Del Toro, he
Yeah,
absolutely named his main character out of after one of Del Toro's mainstays.
I could definitely see that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I'm just looking. So, your parents died, Doug. It's what parents do. They die on you.
That is just, it's just so ridiculous, and that's done with some extremely weird and off-putting talking head editing in one of the first scenes. That just, the filming style, like the style that this was filmed in, is so funny. And like there's some promise here. I mean, like there are some like actually genuinely good shots and some genuinely good lighting, but at the back of your mind, you know what this movie is. And so it's hard to focus on the stuff that is actually genuinely well made about it, which is of course not everything, but it's clear that like there is dedication and there is some talent behind this.
Yeah, and like obviously it's hard to, especially for audiences today with what you're used to seeing in movies. Like people complain about special effects in $100 million movies that looks like incredible effects, but like just doesn't look as good as other ones, and it's just like there you go. And then you throw on a $35,000 film and expect them to be like getting like connecting with it, when it's just like the expectation that most film audiences have is like their standards are so high at this point. And I think it's hard to really make it work on such a small budget, but like at least this movie knows exactly what it's trying to do and even has fun with its lack of budget.
Mm-hmm.
Like one
Absolutely.
particular gag that we're not going to ruin for you, but we're
No.
just going to keep dancing around it the whole entire show.
Yeah. So another just absolutely incredible sequence that like is just chock full of great stuff but has absolutely no place in the story at all is a Vietnam War flashback that happens during an exorcism that comes out of nowhere. And you'd think so Father Stewart, one of the characters, who is played by who I'm pretty sure is the father of the director, but don't quote me on that. That's just what I've gathered from my editing, which makes perfect sense when you're dealing with a virtually no budget film.
Fair.
My family has acted in almost every single one of my film projects, but so he's there during an exorcism and we get a voiceover and we think we're going to get some backstory between him and the guy that's performing the exorcism because that's what the voiceover says. And so we flash back to Vietnam. He has dyed blonde hair, which from the gray, which I think is hysterical. And he's with a
Mhm.
guy, his wartime buddy Ali, who you're pretty sure is the exorcist guy from the future, but then from the past rather. But then his wartime buddy Ali, who made it through the whole war without taking a hit, just gets shot midway through this flashback. And you ask yourself, why the hell was this included? Was it to pad the runtime and include these jokes that didn't work anywhere else? Absolutely. And I'm okay
Absolutely.
with that.
And that's the thing, because like, sometimes it's fun to just not go in like as a critic
Mhm.
of a movie, and just because like I I watched this movie to talk about it on this podcast. I didn't watch this movie to write a review about it or like record an actual video review of it. So like I didn't need to sit there thinking about what didn't work, what like where all of its very low budget shows at
Mhm.
times. But I feel like it's one of those kinds of things where it's just like I had the luxury of just sitting back and just watching it and just how silly and fun it is. And that's the thing, because most people, that is their experience with films, is like, they're just watching it for enjoyment and stuff like that. And like there's definitely enough laughs in this movie, and like genuine laughs too, that like it's worth your time. I struggled like I only put like brand new movies that I watch on Letterbox and like rate them. I would have really struggled with what I would have given this, like star wise, because I'm like, how do I rate this? Do I rate this on like the quality of the film, or do I rate this on like the quality of the experience I had watching it? Because those are two very, very different things.
Mhm. Yeah, I think I have it at a 4 on Letterboxd, and that is because like if we're talking about the enjoyment, it is off the charts. I would have given it a 5, a 10 out of 5, whatever. I would have given it as many as I would be allowed. But um, the quality is just so poor that I can't, in good conscience, give it a 5. And if you look at the Letterbox ratings, they are all over the place, and I think it has 5-star, like the majority 5-star ratings, which I think is hilarious. Um, because people who are watching this realize what it is. I don't know anyone who could watch this and not understand what it was trying to do. I feel like it makes everything extremely clear, which is something that not a lot of low budget, especially like low budget comedy horror movies do. Because like comedy horror is a really difficult line to tread, regardless. Like even in bigger budget films, and this
Mm-hmm.
one does it so well. Of course, it leans into the comedy a little bit more, but also it just uses its low budget to communicate that yes, it is a low budget movie, but it is a low budget movie that is aware of it. And I
Yeah.
think those are at least in what I've seen, those are usually almost always better than the low budget horror movies that are not aware of what they
I'm just going to read the first 3 letterbox reviews that pop up here.
are.
Brendan Steer could make The Irishman, but Martin Scorsese couldn't make The VelociPastor. First Reformed walked, so The VelociPastor could run. They say we haven't had a good dinosaur film since Jurassic Park. Those days are over. Like, the hyperbole and everything, it's just like, oh my god. And like, that's the kind of reaction this movie's gonna garner. It's just so
Mhm.
absurd and silly and fun and ridiculous and entertaining. So that's the thing. If you want to have a fun time, this is the kind of movie to have fun with.
Absolutely. Yes. Um, I wish that I could just rattle off all the quotes that I love, but it would just not be as interesting of a podcast if I just did that. But I will say that this movie is everything that is right with schlocky independent cinema. I love the word schlocky. Had to work it in somewhere, but
Hmm.
it's just like as we've been discussing, it is very much aware of what it is, and that really enhances the experience, like a lot of other movies don't do. Like even a lot of higher budget films, um, like they are a lot of them are not even aware of of some stuff that might be ridiculous. Like to use a recent example, Morbius. The scene where Matt Smith is dancing in front of a mirror after his spoiler, but who cares, vampire transformation.
Yep.
He I feel like I think the movie is thinking that hey, this is a moment of comic relief in a very serious superhero origin film, but it's not. It is a moment of comic relief in a pretty pathetic and oftentimes unintentionally funny superhero film with just bad CGI. If Morbius had
Hmm.
treated itself a little bit more like the VelociPastor, I genuinely think it could have been a better movie. And that is what I will say about that. That is the end of my Morbius discussion for the night. I don't want that word to go through my mouth for a while.
Well, I'm gonna pick another movie, and I guess the shared universe that movie is a part of. I guess with Venom, like when Venom, the first Venom movie, is at its best, it's when it's having fun and realizing that this movie is stupid
Hmm.
and ridiculous. Like Tom Hardy freaking out, like trying to eat lobsters out of a fish tank. Like that's peak Venom right there. And like how did they try to make a serious movie when Venom literally says, like a turd in the wind? It's just like he literally just said turd.
In the wind.
Like in the wind. Just stupid. And that's the thing. So there's a lot of movies out there that need to really realize how stupid and ridiculous they are. And they need to take something out of the VelociPastor's book because this knows exactly how ridiculous and stupid it is.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. It is just absolutely crazy. And if you haven't seen it, you should watch it immediately. That is my heartfelt recommendation. And Shane, I'm sure
Mhm.
I'm echoing yours as well. Um, any final words on the VelociPastor before we move on to our lists?
You thought now I'm gonna have some hyperbole. You thought the battle at end to end game was epic. You thought the Statue of Liberty fight in No Way Home was epic. You don't know anything until you watch a group of ninjas fighting a dude in a velociraptor costume, because that is true epic cinematic action.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you need to experience it.
This is exactly what Scorsese was talking about. This is cinema. And yeah, I think that couldn't get through that with a straight face.
This
Um,
is the roller coaster
yeah.
amusement park ride that Scorsese was talking about.
So there was a sequel to the VelociPastor in development. But unfortunately, it was announced a couple days before the pandemic started. So I have a feeling that's on hold for now. But a little bit
Mm.
after that, a spiritual sequel from the same creative team and the same some of the same cast called Outback Dracula, which is an LGBTQ vampire horror comedy, is being produced. Either one, I am absolutely fine with. I really want to see what's next from these people. Even if it doesn't continue the VelociPastor continuation, I feel like there's no way they can capture lightning in a bottle as well as they did with this one.
No, they're like, you did it. Just move on. Try something different. Try Lamageddon,
I
which
still have
is
that.
one of the
Oh my god,
which is, you might like also like this
that
on
tab
IMDb.
that tab is right next to this on my screen right now. Lamageddon. I still haven't checked it out. Who knows? I might be choosing it as I'm. If I do choose it, I'm definitely going to put some distance in between this, the VelociPastor, and that one. But who knows? I might use this podcast as an excuse to watch that one.
Well, we got Spaghetti Man, Killer Sofa, Carousel, Zombievers.
Oh, I've seen Zombievers. Have you seen Zombievers?
I have not seen any of
Oh my
these.
god. Zombievers is terrible, but the trailer scared the shit out of me when I saw it on the Apple Trailers app that one time. I think I was a little bit too young. I probably shouldn't have watched it. But
Hmm.
and now thinking back on it, I am just floored by how stupid it was.
I'm looking at this. This has like, did Backstreet Boys play Zombiever Bear? I'm just looking at the cast. I'm like,
That's
Bill
insane.
Burr's in this.
What?
Uh, like
Wow. Okay, well, that
John
might be
Mayer's in it.
that might be my pick for the for a future episode, but we'll
There
see.
you
We'll
go.
see.
We shall see.
Anyway, so shall we move on to our lists?
I'm ready.
Excellent. So again, the topics we will be discussing today: dinosaur movies, low budget horror, and films released in 2018. Shane, you want to go first? Going down your list of your top 5 dinosaur movies.
So, are we going from 5 to 1? I'm assuming.
Yeah, sure.
So, number 5, The Land Before Time,
Nice.
and all of its infinite amount of sequels. Number 4, We're Back, A Dinosaur Story, which I have not watched either of those movies in a long time.
Mhm.
Number 3, The Good Dinosaur, because I was one of 5 people who loved that movie. The moment Sam Elliott as a T-Rex said, "I smothered it in its own blood," I'm like, this is a masterpiece of Western filmmaking with dinosaurs. And number 2 is King Kong, because there are indeed dinosaurs on that island. I guess you could have picked a whole variety of different Kong
Right.
type
Which
things.
which Kong would you say
I
if you
picked
had
the
had to choose?
original, like, was it
33?
from like the 30s? Yeah,
33, yeah.
that one. And then, is there any other one that you could pick as number 1 that isn't Jurassic Park?
It's true.
So, Jurassic Park's my number 1.
Yeah, I don't like The Good Dinosaur. I think I blocked it out. It is my that's Pixar, right? It's definitely my
Yes.
least favorite Pixar. Granted, I don't think it's a terrible movie. I just didn't connect to it at all. I think I mean, I would say I wasn't the target audience, but you weren't either because you are older than I am. But yeah,
I am
it.
a big fan of westerns,
I did. Yeah,
and
I just never connected with that one.
that movie is 100% a western
Yeah, totally fair.
in the strangest way.
Yeah. So I have not seen as many dinosaur movies as you have. So my breadth of ones to choose from is a little bit limited. But I am quite happy with my list. Number
Okay.
5 is Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. This is a movie that I don't like nearly as much. Sorry, that I like much more than everyone else. Granted, I
Hmm.
don't think it's a great movie, but we have like J.A. Bayona is at the helm. I think he's a fantastic director.
A
And
monster calls.
Exactly. I feel like a lot of people's problems with this was it's not as good as Jurassic World or the original Jurassic Park, but it's really hard to live up to the original. It's impossible to live up to the original Jurassic Park. So I feel like that bar will always be unreachable. I'm looking at it right now. It's like it's all the way up there.
Yep.
My number 4 is a Disney film that everyone forgot about called Dinosaur that was released in 2001. Um, Revolutionary visual effects here. I don't remember
Yep.
too much of the story, but wow, does this movie look beautiful. My number 3 is Jurassic World. I This is another one that I think I like more than most people. I think it's a breath of fresh air for the franchise. My number 2 is the VelociPastor because how could it not be? There's no way it could be number 1, so it has to be bumped down just a little bit. And my number 1 is Jurassic Park. Again, as you mentioned, there is no way that this can be put anywhere else. Um, or rather that anything else could be put in this spot because it is the iconic dinosaur film, and I think that's how it will remain.
Hmm. I don't think that's changing ever at
Mhm.
this point
Yeah.
because it's just that good.
hmm I would have put King Kong on my list. My criteria, I guess, was slightly different from yours. I didn't count it as a dinosaur movie. Mine
Okay.
are all like dinosaur focused, but I completely respect your decision to include it. Um,
Because like I was like, do I want to put any of the other Jurassic Park movies on my list? And I'm just like, the closest one was Lost World. That was definitely the closest one.
right.
Because I'm not the hugest fan of Jurassic World, but that movie jumped a shark when you had a Velociraptor riding a T Rex fighting a genetically engineered dinosaur, and then a giant like shark dinosaur RKO's the Indominus Rex out of nowhere at the end of the movie. And I'm like, where's all the RKO vines for this? And then I dated myself.
Right. That would have been around the time that Vine was slowly dwindling, right?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. um, but yeah. So also, just I feel like I should have mentioned this earlier. Like these are by including these movies on our list, we are not ruling out including them in the future. These are just um, these are movies that we think are best emblematic um, of the categories. Not and so
Yes.
if we do these in the future, if we do one of these in the future, like who knows how long this podcast is going to go? I would like it to go forever, but who knows? We'll see.
Forever.
But so if we do these movies, we may repeat categories, we may not. Who knows? We're still figuring this shit out.
Yep.
But our next category is low budget horror movies. Now, before we start counting them down, I'll go first for this one. Shane, how did you define low budget horror for your list?
That was tricky because I felt like if it was any like I wound up putting most of them based off of what low budget would be for a major studio, which was like $1 million or less, or like around $1 million, or like I think at most maybe two. But there is one on here that is legitimately like a bunch of friends just made this movie together, and I got to interview them, and it was a lot of
Mhm.
fun. So I'm gonna have a nice shout out there.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, so I define it essentially as I took it at title value. I suppose it is horror movies that were made with a low budget, whether that be low budget at the time. I didn't adjust for inflation at all.
Me neither.
So a lot of these are going to be, at least for my list, incredibly famous movies. But I think that they are again they are emblematic of the category. So
Yep.
yeah, I will go first here. My number 5 is Sleepaway Camp. If you want a movie with iconic one-liners to rival the VelociPastor, Sleepaway Camp is the one. I watched this recently for the first time, and I was in stitches nearly every scene. I don't think it's meant to be as funny as it is, but I do think there is a certain amount of sort of poking fun that you don't see in a lot of, especially in a lot of the ones that will show up on my list. My number 4 is The Evil Dead, that being the original, just because there was more money for the sequels. This is absolutely the iconic Cabin in the Woods story.
Mm-hmm.
And it just works perfectly on almost every level. Although I do think the sequel's a better movie. It and most other similar horror movies would not exist without The Evil Dead. Horror would be a very different place without it. My
Mm-hmm.
number 3 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. This movie's just terrifying on every single level, from the primal fear of being stranded in a you know in not just the South, but in the wilderness anywhere, and then the other primal fear of being chased by a hulking man with a chainsaw. I think this is another one that I watched recently for the first time before the Netflix one came out earlier this year. My number 2 is I saw that. I did not hate the Netflix one, but that is a discussion for another day. My number 2 is Night of the Living Dead. Again, just an absolute icon in George A. Romero, and just the behind the scenes of this film is perhaps more impressive than the film itself. But the film also is just a marvel. And my number 1 is Halloween. I love this movie. It is Halloween is one of my favorite horror franchises. Not because the movies are good. In fact, most of them are dog shit. But it is fun, and it is still going. It is defying the box office and the critical reception, and it just keeps on going. And I have a lot of respect for that.
Absolutely. We definitely have three at least similar ones,
Excellent.
or well, shared ones. They're the exact same movies. Um, so I have one quick shout for my number 5 which is Death Drop Gorgeous, and this is a really like micro budget horror movie that's a LGBTQ plus community film about a serial killer killing drag queens. And this movie has some of the most absurd kills I've seen, including one getting, let's just say, somebody's body parts in a meat grinder, except they use a toy for the filming the
Oof!
scene.
Wow!
And it's
Wow!
so silly. And they definitely
I
lean,
kind of love it.
yeah, it this is such a fun movie, and the three guys that made it, who wrote it and then starred in it, I got to interview them, and it was such a fun time. My number 4 is the Babadook,
Ooh, good pull.
which God is unnerving. Like, I curled up in a ball on my couch midday with all the lights on, because that's how much that movie scared me. Number 3 is Night of the Living Dead. Number 2 is The Evil Dead, and number 1 is Halloween. So there you go. Some
I
of
love it.
those most iconic, like low, like real low budget films at the time. And my brother tried to get all of his friends to keep voting for John Carpenter in my tournament, because if I ever do Carpenter on my Welcome to Wasteland show, my brother is coming on for Halloween. So special place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there are just too many iconic films here for, at least for me, for the VelociPastor to rank. Even though it is the one I have the most fun with, it is not necessarily the one that I would go to when I'm thinking of low budget horror. Which is
Mm-hmm.
how I really went off for this list. So our final category is quite wide: movies released in 2018. This is going to be fun every time we do. An episode, and I have a feeling that like the year that the film comes out is going to be a solid recurring category, just
Yep.
because they could be all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So Shane, it is your turn to start.
So I got number 5, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse,
Nice.
which, oh my God, that just took everybody by storm. And Across the Spider-Verse, it's coming.
Hell yeah.
Um, my buddy, Armando Iannucci, The Death of Stalin. I laughed so hard. I think one of the funniest moments in the whole entire film is when Jason Isaacs just shows up and just like throws off his cape and just like in slow motion and just like look at this guy. I'm a humongous fan of Bad Times at the El Royale, and I love that movie. I went with some of my friends, and they were definitely not anywhere near as high on it as I was, but like that was my number three. One that is very surprising to me that made it this high was Eighth Grade, from Bo Burnham, because like I'm generally not the kind of person that you're gonna see a whole lot of like straight up dramas in like my top films, because like I'm a big genre film fan, but like I couldn't resist. I just love that movie so much. And then number one is the movie that literally has everything. Has drama, science fiction, fantasy-ish moments, like straight horror moments, because there's some terrifying moments in this, is Annihilation.
Ooh.
And I'm a huge fan of Alex Garland, and I can't wait for Men to come out. And I think that's June. It's come out quick.
I think it's May, actually. Am I
Is it?
wrong? Yeah,
Oh
I
my
think it's
god,
like
it's
the
even
end of May.
closer.
May 20th. Who knows? Like it might be a limited release. Who really knows with A24? But yeah, I'm pumped for that one too.
Screener. But Annihilation, that movie blew me away.
I have yet to see it. I'm sure it would show up on my list if I have. I know. You got to pick for next week, Shane. That's all I'm
I
saying.
Hey, the gears are turning in my head right now.
um,
So
yeah, but anyway, so my list, we're gonna have some crossover. Is my number five is Bad Times at the El Royale. I love this movie. I was expecting big things, especially because it came from Drew Goddard, who made actually my favorite horror movie, which is Cabin in the Woods, and this movie did not disappoint at all. Number four is Green Book. Speaking of movies that I liked more than everyone else, Green Book is up there, and I'm glad you're not the one to personally attack someone's taste, Shane, because I know people who would savage me for liking this movie. I know.
to be fair, Green Book was my number 13 movie
Nice,
of
nice.
that year.
I I would not. I'm. I wouldn't necessarily say that that this deserved Best Picture, but I will say that I truly enjoyed the couple times that I saw it, and I think it's just a really fun watch, and the performances are really good. My number three is Infinity War. Just what can you say about the Deathly Hallows Part One of the MCU? My God, is this movie incredible and sets up the finale perfectly. My number two is Black Klansman, Spike Lee's film from
Nice.
2018, that I just think is. It is one of my favorites of his films. Granted, I have not seen nearly enough to make that bold claim, but I just think the performances here are incredible, especially John David Washington and Adam Driver. And my number one is Into the Spider-Verse. What more can you say? This movie is, I believe, hopefully, ideally, it will become known as the quintessential Marvel movie, just because it does quite literally everything right. The animation's incredible, and I'm sure, like this is one series where I believe the sequels could be as good, if not better, than the original film. I have the utmost faith in this creative team. But yeah.
I want my Spider-Man Noir spinoff with Nick Cage.
I so recently on Letterboxd I went through the movies the years from the present 2022 to back all the way to 2000, and I ranked every movie that I have seen in all of those years. And so I have a pretty good picture of where many of the films that we will discuss on this podcast stand. And so according to Letterboxd, I've seen 48 feature films from 2018. I have not included. I think I'm including miniseries, but not like comedy specials and shorts, just features. And
Mhm.
VelociPastor currently comes in at number nine, right behind Halloween and right ahead of Game Night, which is another absolutely incredible comedy.
Oh my god, when I saw Game Night, I had no idea that movie was going to be as great as it was.
Hell
And
yeah.
Jesse Plemons is comedy gold
Hmm.
in that movie. And actually, like everybody is just so great in that movie, top to bottom.
Yeah, he proved that he had those muscles, I think, for game night. But yeah, so I guess this is around the point at the end of the episode where I would say where the film that we are discussing ranks with me and Shane. I don't know if you want to do the same going forward, but
Number one.
yes, VelociPastor is number one. It is both the best and the worst film that we've discussed on this podcast so far.
There
But
you go.
oh man, there is some sort of alarm out there. I hope everything's okay. Can you hear it, Shane?
No.
Okay, cool, good. Anyway, so yeah, this was the very first episode of Rowan and the Wasteland. Shane, of course, I know you have lots to plug, so go for it.
Deep breath. So I have my YouTube channel, which is the Wasteland Reviewer YouTube channel, where I do basically review anything and everything. I have a couple shows. My interview show, Lost in the Wasteland. I have my weekly movie show where I take a deep dive into a particular film. Welcome to the Wasteland. I have a new talk show, Wasteland Talks. Find me on Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, TikTok. I have some fun things I've been doing on TikTok, so I definitely want to plug that. And then I write for Sif Pop, Scribe Magazine, and occasionally, less now than I used to, but still throwing some reviews out for Movie Hole and Scare Magazine. And I do get to do some interviews for them too, which has been pretty cool. I got to interview Wee Man and Preston from Jackass recently, which was a lot of fun.
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe I've guest starred on, like guested on all of your shows on YouTube, right?
You have.
I am
And
prolific.
you are a mainstay and a big help for Welcome to the Wasteland,
Of
which
course.
you'll be coming on for Amblin.
I love it.
When
Which probably when this episode comes out is going to be far in the past. But
you're actually going to be you all are going to be preparing for my West Side Story episode of Steven Spielberg, which is in December.
Really?
Just kidding.
Oh, okay. I mean, I
well,
wouldn't
no,
be surprised.
like legitimately though, it is going to take me until December
to finish Spielberg.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I will be with you along the way. I can't believe that we have known each other less than a year. I believe I joined Sif Pop in October, and I was first on the Wasteland shows maybe November. So yeah, it's crazy. But hey, I had a lot of fun with this debut episode, and
absolutely.
If I had a glass, I would raise it to many more. But so I write. I'm the founder and editor of the Lenient Critic. That's at thelenientcritic.com. Anywhere that I almost said anywhere websites are found, you can find that on the internet. That's LENIENT, the Lenient Critic. I also have a companion podcast that Shane has guested on many times, and yeah, so. For Rowan Wood and Shane Conto, I want to thank you all out there very much for listening. And we will be back next week with a brand new episode. Shane, next week is your choice. Do you want to tell the viewers and listeners what they should watch in preparation for next week?
We're figuring out what this might be. Is it going to be something off of my watch list? Is it going to be one of the many movies that just hang out behind me on all my videos? You're going to have to tune in and find out as I stare deeply into the camera. If you're listening at home.
Well, hopefully at this point I'll have made some sort of social media for this, and we can announce it so y'all have some time to watch it. Maybe if you want to, because I feel like these episodes are going to be better with if we give them a chance to watch beforehand.
Yeah. Then we could talk about
absolutely
some amazing gags that we did not spoil for this movie because we wouldn't dare.
Go watch the VelociPastor, please. Yeah, so again, thank you all out there for listening, or if you're watching on YouTube, thank you very much. And we'll be back next week with a brand new episode.